To kick off Chapter 8, we're going to talk about two very important properties that you want a deductive argument to have: validity and soundness. In Chapter 8, our focus shifts from inductive arguments, which we've been looking at for the past 3 chapters, to deductive arguments. Recall that deductively valid arguments guarantee the truth of the premises. That is, a deductively valid argument is such that if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true as well. Let's take a look at an example of why this is so. Okay, so on the left we've got ourselves an inductive argument. It's the statistical syllogism, which we encountered back in Chapter 4. And on the right here we've got a deductive argument called the quasi-syllogism. Both are two-premise arguments, and both have the same second premise, that some object X is an F. And they've both got the same conclusion, that the same object is a G. However, their first premise is different. In the statistical syllogism, we've got most F's are G's, and in the deductive argument, we've got all F's are G's. Now, the difference is, if both of these premises are true, now imagine they are. Okay, we've got the case, if something's an F, then it's a G because all F's are G's. Okay, imagine that's true, no matter what the F's or G's happen to be. Just imagine that's true. Now think that X is one of the F's. Well, if it's one of the F's, then it's gotta be one of the G's. If it's not obvious to you why this is so, take a look at this picture. So we've said all F's are G's. So everything that's an F fits inside here. And then we learn that an X is one of the F's. Therefore, it's got to be one of the things that's also the G's. It doesn't matter what the F's are. It doesn't matter what the G's are. In virtue of the nature of the relationship between these premises, we can conclude with certainty that if both these things are true, then X has to be a G. Contrast that with this: most F's are G's, X is an F, X is a G. The picture looks like something like this. We know that most of the F things fall inside the G category, but not all of them do. So we can't conclude with certainty that the X, which falls somewhere in here, is also one of the G's. It's not the case that if the premises are true, the conclusion also must be true. Notice how it doesn't matter what the F's are and what the G's are. So long as this relationship holds, no matter what F and G are, this will be valid. For this reason, because this is just a form devoid of any specific content or subject matter, this is referred to as a valid argument form, and different instances of this form will also be valid. An instance is a case where you've got an argument form, but the specifics are filled in with content of a certain type. So here we've got the same structure where men are the F's and mortals are the G's and Socrates is the X. So we've got first premise, all men are mortal. Second premise, Socrates is a man, and the conclusion, therefore Socrates is mortal. Now, of course, both these premises happen to be true, which makes it easy to imagine to yourself, if both of these premises are true, would the conclusion follow? But regardless of whether or not the premises are true, when you're assessing validity, that's what you should do. Say to yourself, okay, if all these premises are true, if I imagine they're all true, must the conclusion follow? And the answer is yes. When the argument is valid, the conclusion must follow. The conclusion must also be true. The same thing happens over here with this argument. All horses are quadrupeds. Jaws is a horse, therefore Jaws is a quadruped. Now, assuming we're talking about the shark, Jaws, who in fact is not a horse or a quadruped, this argument is going to have a false conclusion, but it's not because it's invalid. It's because it has a false premise, namely the second one, that Jaws is a horse. But stop and think about a world in which it were the case that all horses are quadrupeds, and that one is true, so easy to think about that world. It's like ours. But second, think to yourself, okay, if Jaws were a horse, would he also have to be a quadruped, given this first premise? The answer is yes, he would have to be. So both of these arguments are valid. The only difference is this first one is what we'll call sound, and the second one is what we'll call unsound. A sound argument is a valid argument in which all the premises are true. So in short, soundness is validity plus all true premises. Conversely, when an argument either is invalid or lacks all true premises, we can call the argument unsound. So I can't stress enough how important it is in this chapter for you to understand what makes an argument valid and what makes an argument sound. An argument is valid when it's the case that if all the premises are true, then the conclusion must also be true. And an argument is sound when it's valid and has all true premises. And no, I do not know why this thing I found on the internet says "and valid argument" instead of "a valid argument." I guess it turns out the internet isn't perfect after all.